Now, let's have the application of water in the human body. Water is a known building block. When we say building block, it is a substance. Guys, it's the term that we use to refer to a specific substance or compound that is a special ingredient in building or synthesizing bigger molecules or compound. Baka gani building block, importante na siya nga ingredient, importante na siya nga reactant sa synthesis or making or building of bigger molecules such as your carbohydrates, proteins, nucleic acids, and of course your lipids. Visually, water fills cells to help maintain shape and structure. The water inside many cells, including those that make up the human body, creates pressure that opposes external forces, similar to putting air in a balloon. As shape is critical for biochemical processes, this is also one of water's most important roles. So take note, guys, that your cell is of what? Spherical in shape, right? Ang imong cell is spherical or round in shape. And the substance that keeps the shape of the cell is water. I mean, it's one of the substances that keeps the shape of the cell. Kung wala ang tubig, that basically pushes the membrane of the cell out towards the outside environment, and without the water that pushing the cell inside, hindi na ma-maintain ang ginatawag nga spherical shape or round shape of the cell. Right? So I guess you already heard this one, that water can also provide force, right? The presence of water alone can provide force. So the presence of water sa sulod sang cell basically provides that specific outward force nga nagapush sang sang membrane sang cell pakwa. And at the same time, we have water, right? Kung sa diin gaka-expose ang cell. Remember, your cells are exposed to plasma, which is the fluid portion of the blood, and plasma is composed of water. So the water molecules nga ara sa plasma basically provide that specific force nga nagatulod man sa cell. So the equal force nga ara sa sulod sang cell kag sagwa sang cell basically maintain that specific spherical or circular shape sang imo nga cell. Now remember, shape is critical for biochemical processes. Actually, guys, that is correct. That is one of the many things that you should always remember regarding some biochemical processes. Biochemical processes usually depend on the shape of the biochemical compounds, shapes some proteins, most especially. Or if we would like to be specific, enzymes. As I've mentioned sa aton synchronous class, enzymes are proteins that are very important in the biochemical processes. Sige lang, I will discuss how important that we have functioning enzymes sa lawas naton. Ano man gid bala ang importance ni enzymes sa aton lawas, most especially sa biochemical processes. But let me just inform you that again, enzymes are proteins that are important in biochemical processes. So, dapat functioning gid yung enzyme sa sulod sang lawas. And remember that the function of enzymes also depend in the shape of the enzymes. For example, amuning shape bisang imong enzyme, circular. Dapat circular siya all throughout sa biochemical process. Kung gulpyado naglain ang shape ng enzyme, for example, nayupok bi ang enzyme, ang shape niya imbes circular, may do ano na siya do irregularly shaped na siya nga protein, may possibility nga hindi yan na mahimo ang iya nga function. Hindi na mapuslan ang enzyme. Kung wala ka na enzyme nga gamiton sa biochemical process, this could jeopardize the biochemical process. Hindi mag-andar yung biochemical process. Wala ta mayo makuha nga output or product halin sa biochemical process nga ina. See, so diri pa lang nga explanation, I am showing you how shape is important in the biochemical process. Shape kumbaga sang aton nga biomolecules. So that's why ang water is very important, gid, because water is one of those substances that maintain the shape of the biomolecules inside of the body. And it also one of the substances that maintain the shape of our cells. Right, so this is the best representation of, the importance of water in maintaining the shape of the cell. So as you can see on the left side, you have the hydrated cell, which means it has a good amount of water inside of it and outside of it. And whereas we have there on the right side a specific dehydrated cell. When we say dehydrated cell, which means it is lacking of water, or that the content of the cell is, the water content of the cell is less than what is really required. So as you can see, duking drawing ko naman sa previous na slide, but anyway, let me just reiterate. So in the hydrated cell, may ara siya good amount of water sa sulod niya, right? So the presence of, water molecules aray sa sulod sang cell basically contributes to that specific outward force nga naga-push sa cell membrane sa imong cell paguha. So kung puro lang outward force ang miara, pwede mabuka ang cell. But the good thing is, miara man ta water molecules sa gwa sang cell that also provide that specific inward force naman, na naga-push naman sa cell membrane sang cell pasulod. So the equal amount of force sa sulod sang cell kag sa gwa sang cell basically maintains that specific circular or spherical shape sang cell. Whereas sa imong dehydrated nga cell, dutay ang water molecules diri sa sulod, which means dutay man ang outward nga force. Take note nga dako-dako gid nga percentage sa imong nga blood is plasma or liquid or water molecules. Which means, kung damo water molecules ang gwa sang cell, dako man nga force ang pwede nga mahatag dira sa cell membrane sang cell. So kung damo force, kung damo external nga force contributed by the water molecules halin sa plasma, kag dutay man nga force sa sulod sang cell, maayawan niya ang imo nga cell mismo nga mag-maintain sing iya nga shape. So gakayupok ang cell or gaka irregular ang iya nga shape. Nga wala may ma-counteract, wala enough nga force sa sulod sang cell nga maka-counteract sa great force contributed by the water molecules coming from the plasma or liquid, portion of your blood. Water also contributes to the formation of membranes surrounding the cell. So we already discussed that one in the previous slides. Without water, cell membranes would lack structure, correct? Ang cell membrane, imbes nga mangin circular na siya, pwede siya maging irregular in shape. Ang imong cell, wala masyado definite nga structure. Hindi siya circular, hindi siya spherical. And take note, kung hindi na spherical ang ato nga cell, kung wala na structure ang cell membrane naton, this could result to what? Harmful molecules getting inside of the cell and important molecules getting outside of the cell. Remember that your cell membrane your cell membrane has that specific selective permeability na property, which means due to its selective permeability na property, the in and out of substances sa cell nimo is being controlled. Now, kung nadula ang structures ng cell membrane, pwede man madula ang pagiging selective permeable sang imo nga cell membrane. Kung hindi na selective permeable ang imo cell membrane, pwede na nga wala control ang pagsulod kag pagwa sang water molecules sa cell. Which means, hindi na ma-detect sang cell kung ang nagasulod sa iya harmful molecules or hindi. Kag hindi naman makontrol sang cell ang pagwa sang important molecules. Important molecules, in a sense nga, ang amunang ang mga molecules are really needed sa mga biochemical processes sa sulod sang cell. Again, without the correct structure of cell membrane, this could lead to the loss of selective permeability nga properties ng cell membrane, which means there would be no more control sa pag-go in and out of substances sa imong cell. That means the cell won't be able to know if the substances that are going inside the cell is already harmful or not, or the substances that are going out of the cell are important molecules or not. So, ang bottom line is, kung dutay ang water molecules sa sulod sa cell, pwede na mag-lead into jeopardized biochemical processes. Pwede nga magkalagba-gaba ang biochemical process sa lawas. So you have there a picture showing the phospholipid bilayer. Remember that the phospholipid bilayer is part of your cellular membrane, correct? And the phospholipid bilayer is the one that provides the cell membrane its selective permeability. So this is your phospholipid bilayer, ari siya. Halin di sa dako nga bilog ni, hasta sa dako man nga bilog diri. Right? So that's your phospholipid bilayer. Bilayer because it is composed of two layers of phospholipids arranged in this manner. Now, let's say this is the outside environment of the cell and this is the inside environment of the cell. Remember that the inside environment of the cell is also contains what? Water molecules. Yes, may tubig man da sa sulod sang cell. And the same thing sa gwa sang cell nimo. Sa gwa sang cell, may ara ka man da water molecules. Kaya nga, ang gwa sang cell mo is already plasma, correct? Which is the liquid part of your blood. So, sa gwa sang cell or the outside environment of the cell, may water molecules. Sa inside parts ng cell, may water molecules man. Now, your lipids, your phospholipids, actually have two types of, side. May ara siya hydrophilic na side, which means water-loving nga side, and may ara siya duha ka tail, which is the hydrophobic side or water-hating. Hydrophobic or water-hating. So since ang ulo sa imong phospholipid is hydrophilic, which means it can interact with water. Ang tanan nga ulo ni sang phospholipids nimo are arranged or positioned towards the water molecules. Kasi sila malang pwede maka-form attraction with water molecules. Whereas ang tails naman sang phospholipid nimo are arranged away from the water molecules. Why? Because hindi nila kaya mag-form attraction with water molecules. Why? Kaya gani, hydrophobic sila. Non-polar sila nga part. Hindi sila kahimo sang attraction or bonding with the water molecules. So, first set pa lang na sang phospholipid. The second set of phospholipid is also arranged in the same manner. Ang tanan nga ulo sang second batch nga phospholipid nagaatubang sa water molecules nga ara sa sulod sang cell. Why? Because ang ulo sang imong phospholipid or the phospholipid head is hydrophilic, which means kaya nila mag-interact sa water molecules nga ara sa sulod sang cell. Now, how about the tails? Ang tails naman is ang second nga layer sa imong phospholipid. They are arranged away from the water molecules. So if these are the water molecules, arrange sila away from the water molecules. Why? Because again, they are hydrophobic. They cannot form, attraction with water molecules. So laban-laban, ma-form sila yung attraction sa kapwa nila nga non-polar or hydrophobic na molecule, which is the tail side sang first layer sang phospholipid. So this is the tail naman niya sang second layer sang phospholipid. So since sila lang ang hydrophobic nga part sang phospholipid, sila lang yung mag-form attraction. And the presence of polar part of phospholipid and non-polar part of phospholipid makes the phospholipid bilayer selectively permeable, whereas only non-polar substances can travel or pass the hydrophobic tails again, selective permeable because 1. Only non-polar substances can pass through the non-polar or hydrophobic tails. Whereas diri naman niya sa part 3 sang imo nga phospholipid bilayer, only polar substances can pass. So if there are no water molecules diri sa sulod sang cell, maguba ang phospholipid bilayer. Wala na water molecules kung sa diin ma-attract ini nga part sang imo nga phospholipid bilayer. So namatabo, pwede na ma-dissociate ini nga part. Pwede magkalakakas ng mga phospholipids. So kung mag-amo na, ma-irregular ang shape sang imo nga cellular membrane. Now let's talk about the importance of water in forming your DNA and protein. Now, water drives the folding of your amino acid chains as different types of amino acids seek and avoid interacting with water. So first things first, your amino acid is the building block, of proteins. Which means one protein molecule is composed of a lot of amino acids. When we say amino acid chain, hapos na guys. Isa ka amino acid connected to another amino acid. That specific amino acid is then connected to another amino acid. And this is known as your amino acid chain. Right? And guys, kung laba-laba na ng amino acid chain, gamat-amat na siya fold. Because your proteins actually fold. Right? Your amino acid chains actually fold in order to form that specific shape na characteristics ng isa ka protein. For example, ang protein B is globular in shape. Amo lang ang makita mo sa protein, globular in shape. But, molecularly, ang itsura na would be amino acids nga nagaramburanay, nagafold, hasta nakabuo siya sa globular nga shape. Alright? And the folding of your amino acid chains are actually dependent also with the presence of water. Because, take note that your amino acids also come in different classifications. Mayara ta non-polar amino acids and mayara man ta polar amino acids. So, kabalo na ka muna, kung may non-polar amino acids kita, tigid na ang water. Right? And for example, in a specific amino acid chain, gamayon ta. In a specific amino acid chain, for example, amino acid ni siya, amino acid na ni, tapos, ang pula na nga duha ka amino acids are polar, for example. Polar sila be. And ang black ni nga amino acid, gindrawing ko lang guys ha, pero wala niya color actually ang amino acids. Gindrawing ko lang para at least kabalo ka mo kung anong kakatabo sa folding. For example, this would be the non-polar amino acids, and the red ones are the polar amino acids. And let's say the blue ones are water molecules. So, water molecule, water molecule, water molecule. Now, what will happen if water is exposed to a non-polar amino acid? Wala interaction, di ba? Wala ma-form nga bond. But, since ang non-polar amino acids cannot interact with water, ano matabo? They tend to move away from the water. Water hating sila mo kay non-polar. So, ang matabo would be this one. If these are the polar amino acids, kag amo ni ang non-polar amino acids, kag may tubig diri nga part, ano matabo? They tend to ma-fold sila because they have to move away from the water molecules. Ma-fold sila away from the water molecules. How about the polar amino acids? Wala, chill lang sila because they can still form interaction with water because water molecules are also polar molecules. So, polar and polar molecules can form interaction. Right? So, water molecule diri, none. Ang non-polar molecule na iya or non-polar amino acid nga part, sila lang na iya ang matiko, ang matupi, or ang ma-fold away from the water molecules. So, kung laba-laba na siya, for example, na polar, tabi non-polar, right? Polar, non-polar. And we add to water molecules dere. Na, ang matabo na guys would be this. So, ano matabo? Magamit violet nga na. So, ano matabo? Since this is water molecule and polar man ni siya nga molecule, wala problema. Right? Hindi ni siya mag-iho nga side. But, this one, non-polar siya. Non-polar, non-polar. So, this side of the amino acid chain has to move away from water. So, na matabo, ma-move na siya pa ni. Let me draw that one. Tapos, ma-fold siya away from the water molecules. Right? Next. Ang next nga part is this one. Polar, polar. Di kay polar man siya, hindi man siya mag-move away gid sa water molecules because, again, water molecules are also polar. Maka-form sila gyapon interaction. So, matabo would be this one. Ma-maintain di siya sa dalom. How about this one? Non-polar molecules. But look at this side. Ang water molecules are sa babaw. So, dapat ma-move away sa water molecules ang non-polar side sang amino acid. So, i-drawing naton. Move away ko na mo. Move away gyapon. At manaog na siya So, see, in this sense, may ara kang tawag nga folding na sang imo nga amino acid. Guys, hindi lang na amo na kanubo ang imong amino acid chain. Laba pag inakis ang imong amino acid chain. There could be 20 to hundreds, right, of amino acids that are, bonded together. Pag mag-fold na sila, ang laba nga chain sa amino acid, mag-fold na until such time nga mahuman ang isa ka protein. Water molecules surround DNA in an ordered fashion to support its characteristic double helix conformation. O lain naman niya kay kay DNA. You know your DNA, I guess you already knew this one, that your DNA is arranged in a double helix fashion. Your DNA has two strands, right? This is the first strand, and this would be the second strand of your DNA. And the two strands are arranged in a double helical, fashion, double helix, right? And one of the substances that basically support this specific, arrangement of your DNA would be water. Again, water is one of the substances that basically make it possible for the DNA to have this helical conformation or double helix conformation. So without water, pwede nga hindi mag-form mayo ang double helix. Kag pwede man nga ma-break ang bonding sang duha ka strand. Chemical reactions of water. Water is directly involved in many chemical reactions to build or synthesize or make and break down important components of the cell. Molecules like DNA and proteins are made of repetitive units of molecular or smaller molecules. Putting these small molecules together occurs through a reaction that produces water. Water is required for the reverse reaction that breaks down these molecules, allowing cells to obtain nutrients or repurpose pieces of big molecules. So guys, ari lang ini. Water is important in building up of substances. If there is building up of substances or synthesis, the product is a big compound plus water. Again, in synthesis, the products should always be a bigger compound and a water molecule. In breaking down, the term is usually hydrolysis. hydrolysis, or breaking down of your macromolecules. In hydrolysis, the products are smaller compounds or molecules, again, smaller compounds or molecules, and actually no end, smaller compounds lang. But take note, kung amuning product, smaller compounds ang product, ang reactants naman, again, ang reactants naman sa hydrolysis would be the bigger compound, and water. So as you can see, if we make a specific compound, if we try, for example, to make proteins, what we usually get in the synthesis process would be the proteins themselves, the big compound ng protein, and may ito byproduct ng water. Sige lang, i-specify lang na namon paano nagwa si water as one of the byproducts of the synthesis nga process. And ang suli naman sa synthesis, hydrolysis or breaking down of macromolecules. Ang reactants tada would be the bigger compound, for example, proteins, right? Si proteins nimo plus water sa reaction, right? Plus pagid enzyme, hindi ko lang pagibutang ha, but kinanglan na enzyme mo. Plus pagid enzyme, ang ma-produce that would be smaller compounds or the building block, right, of your protein, which is amino acid. But in this sense, sa hydrolysis nga process, ang water nangin reactant. Whereas sa synthesis naman or building up of substances, si water mo ang nangin isa sa mga products. So that is how important water is. That is how important water in different chemical reactions in the body. Sa tanan nga reaction sa body, involved gid ang water. So without water, hindi mag-andar ang mga chemical reactions sa lawas. Wala kita products, wala man kita sang biochemical substances nga pwede gamiton. Water as a buffer. So again, buffer would be any substance that prevents drastic changes in pH. For example, if nag-add ta acid, with the presence of buffer, hindi dali mangin acidic or hindi mangin tamaan ka acidic ang solusyon. And another thing, if nag-add the base or basic or alkaline nga chemical sa solution, but if there is already a buffer sa solution naton, hindi na dali mangin alkaline or hindi mangin sobra ka-alkaline or basic ang solution. So that is how buffer works. Now, what is the importance of buffer in the body? So remember, as I've mentioned in the previous slides, proteins, the function, for example, of proteins depend on the shape of the proteins. Right? Na-mention ko na kayo na that the function of the proteins depends on the shape of the proteins. Kung circular ang protein, dapat circular lang na siya all throughout its life para ma-perform niya ang iyang biological function. If ang circular nga protein nangin irregular in shape because, for example, of environmental factors, external factors, pwede nga hindi na mangin functional ang protein, hindi na siya magamit sa biochemical process. Proteins require specific structure to function properly, as I've mentioned, so it's really important to protect them from acids and bases. Good thing that we have buffers sa body naton. You know, it was already given no sa previous natin yung lesson. One of the examples would be the phosphate buffer system, right, sa aton ng blood. Right, with the presence of phosphate buffer system sa aton nga lawas, hindi amo na ka-drastic at change sa pH sang aton nga lawas in case nga magsaka ang acid content or magsaka ang basic content sa aton nga lawas. That is the function of the phosphate buffer sa lawas naton. And amo man na ang function ni water. Right? Since water is neither positive or negative, because it is both positive and negative nga molecule, it can act as a buffer sa aton nga lawas. So, in a sense, just like the phosphate buffer system and any other buffer system sa lawas naton, water can also act as a buffer that would prevent drastic changes in the blood pH. Kag kung wala drastic changes sa blood naton, or wala masyado drastic changes sa pH sang aton blood, hindi dali-dali maapektuhan ang aton nga proteins. Hindi dali-dali maguba ang shape sang aton nga proteins. So example, no? We have your hydrochloric acid, HCl. It's an acid. So for example, nagtaas ang contents ng HCl sa blood naton. Is it possible, miss? Yes, it is possible nga pwede magka-form sang hydrochloric acid sa aton nga blood, although hindi na siya amo nakadasig ma-form because dasig-dasig lang gaka-buffered man dayon ang hydrochloric acid sa aton nga lawas. Now, for example, we have hydrochloric acid sa blood naton. At the same time, sa blood naton may ta water molecules, right? Kaya may plasma content ang aton nga blood. The liquid portion of our blood is plasma, and it is composed of water molecules. Now, what will happen? The hydrogen atom of the HCl will dissociate from the chloride. Mabulagay na sila. Next, masaka na ang H ion, hydrogen ion sa blood. Good thing may ata water molecules. Ang positive D nga H or ang hydrogen ion mo ni, ma-react na siya dayon kay H2O or water, forming your hydronium ion, H3O+. Right? And leaving your chloride ion sa imo nga blood. So, na-neutralize ang imo nga acid, na-neutralize si HCl mo in a way nga ang hydrogen ion nga naghalin kay HCl gin-neutralize sang imo nga water, forming your hydronium ion. Kagang chloride mo can be used as an electrolyte naman sa imo nga lawas. Because of course, may pagpuslan manigyapon ng chloride sa lawas mo, guys. Right? So that is how your water would act with acid. Now, how about with base? This is hypochlorite. Right? So hypochlorite is a base, and since it is a base, it can also interact with water. So, nang matabo, since this is hypochlorite, niara siya nga, what? Pwede pa ni siya maka-accept actually, guys, sa isa ka atom. So, the H here, or the hydrogen ion, the hydrogen atom from the water will be attracted naman to hypochlorite. Because take note, may ara ka ginatawag nga sobrang at negative charge diyo. And ang sobrang negative charge will attract the positive part of your water. So, ma-attach na sa negative charge sang imo nga hypochlorite. Specifically, siyang oxygen. So, ang isa ka hydrogen atom from the water will be attached to the oxygen part of your hypochlorite. Yes. Forming this specific compound, leaving H O with a negative nga charge. And by the way, this specific compound is known as hypochlorous acid. Right. And this compound is your hydroxide. So water is essential for cellular homeostasis, or what we usually dub as equilibrium, because it transports nutrients to cells and removes waste from cells. It is the medium in which all transport systems function, allowing exchanges between cells, interstitial fluid, and capillaries. So remember guys, sa sulod ng cell mo, you have water, and outside of the cell, may ara ka man that water, right? Plasma, outside of the cell, it's already plasma. It's the liquid or the water content of your blood. Now, the transport of molecules from the cell going to the outside environment of the cell is being facilitated by water. Right? Diin na ginasuspend ang mga substances sa water molecules. Tira sila ginasuspend, which means kung wala water molecules, kung wala water sa sulod man sang cell or sa gwa man sang cell, ang mga molecules tira or substances sa sulod kagwa sang cell hindi na mag-move. Right? Hindi na mag-move. So it's good thing nga mayara ta water sa gwa sang cell, may water man sa sulod sang cell. And that specific water in and out of the cell would serve as a media or place kung sa diin matabo ang exchange of substances in and out of the cell. So water in combination with viscous molecules forms lubricating fluids or your lubricant for joints. It can also serve as a lubricant for saliva, gastric and intestinal mucus secretion in your digestive tract, for mucus in airway secretion in the respiratory system, and for mucus secretion in the genitourinary tract. So basically, whatever liquid substances that are being produced by your body have water content in it. Malamang, liquid sila mo. So, malamang sa malamang, may water molecules na sila, may water content na sila. Ang imo nga mucus, sa mucous membrane nimo, sa respiratory tract nimo, sa digestive tract nimo, even your saliva, all are composed of water molecules. Your joint fluid is also composed of water molecules. May water na siya, may liquid na siya nga part. The semen, right? Vaginal secretions, they all have, water molecules in it. So they serve as lubricants, which means they lessen the friction on the surface, again, on the surface of the tissue. Right? So yeah, that's why wala gasakit imo tuhod, because you still have enough amount of joint fluid sa imong joints. Wala gakaskasanay ang imong bones. Right? Because you have the joint fluid which serves as the lubricant. Your mouth area, kung ginamalhan ka, di ba, sang laway, do ka rough sang texture sa imong dila. right? The presence of saliva sa imong mouth serves as a lubricant that makes friction around sa area sa imong mouth. I mean, the lubricant or the saliva sa imong mouth would lessen the friction dira sa area or surface ng imong mouth. By maintaining the cellular shape, water also acts as a shock absorber during walking or running. This function is important for the brain and spinal cord and is particularly important for the fetus who is protected by a water cushion. So, yep, your brain and spinal cord is basically coated with your CSF or cerebrospinal fluid. Again, cerebrospinal fluid. And the presence of cerebrospinal fluid around your spinal cord and your brain would serve as a shock absorber. So, gulpyada ka lang binabunggo sa pader, wala talang ginapangit, no? Gulpyada ka lang binabunggo sa pader, ang imong ulo na bungko, or ginhampak biyang ulo mo, hindi dali-dali ma-damage ang brain. And for example, nadagdag ka sa puno, hindi ka dali-dali maapektuhan ang imong spinal cord because you have the cerebrospinal fluid protecting your spinal cord as well as your brain. Plus, the fact na mayara ka man niya bony parts or the skeletal parts sa imong head and your spinal column. And of course, the fetus, ang fetus na is protected by the amniotic fluid. Amniotic fluid, which is the fluid that is contained in the placenta. So this is the placenta. For example, this is the baby, right? And the baby is surrounded by the amniotic fluid. The placenta plus the amniotic fluid would protect the baby while it is growing inside of the mother's womb. So kung gulpyada babe, for example, natumba si mother, hindi dali-dali maapektuhan si baby because the amniotic fluid plus the placenta will absorb the shock. Right, so I hope you had fun as well as you were able to get, more information regarding water. I know that you've already knew how important water is to our body, but I'm just hoping that with this specific, discussion, you were able to somehow reinforce whatever you've had learned in your minor chem, in your biology regarding water. So I just hope that you would always remember how water is important to our body. For further reading, you can just visit the sites that I've provided here in the reference section. They're all available in the internet. And also you can just visit Stoker or a book. But I guess the Stoker only has a little info about water. I just reinforce whatever Stoker has written with other articles that I've found in the internet. So happy learning. Thank you so much for listening.